This podcast is powered by Pelotonia. To learn more about our goaltend cancer, visit pelotonia.org or see the link in the show notes.
And that's what one of the things we want to achieve in the long run too, is that people, when they say Columbus, they're like, oh, isn't that where RTRX and Pelotonia happen? And you say yes.
Welcome to One Goal, a podcast from Pelotonia. We're a community dedicated to funding innovative cancer research through a 3-day experience of cycling and volunteering. I'm your host and Chief Operating Officer of Pelotonia, Joe Apgar. Your journey with us to the finish line begins now. Pelotonia is powered by an amazing community, and it's through research that we will see an end to cancer. We want to thank our major funding partners: the American Electric Power Foundation, Huntington, the L Brands Foundation, and Peggy and Richard Santulli. In the fall of 2011, Jim Merkel, the CEO of Rockbridge, attended a dinner in downtown Columbus hosted by Huntington Bank. Huntington's agenda for the evening was simple: thank the bank's customers and community stakeholders for their business, and share the amazing work being done by a relatively new organization called Pelotonia. One of the founding members of Pelotonia spoke at the event, Dr. Mike Caligiuri, at the time the CEO of the James Cancer Hospital and director of the Comprehensive Cancer Center at Ohio State. Caligiuri shared visions of a cancer-free world, and the destination to get there required money invested in innovative cancer research. Caligiuri's passion for the mission was contagious, and Merkel was in awe. His company had formed a team to participate in Pelotonia for the first time in 2011, raising $30,000 as a first-year Peloton with 15 riders. But he wanted to do more. To provide context, Rockbridge is one of the largest hotel owners in the country, having invested billions of dollars into real estate throughout the United States. As a result, they have partners all throughout the U.S. and are well known in their industry nationally, even if their presence in Columbus was not as well known at the time. Having spent much of his career attending conferences throughout the world, an idea crept into Merkel's head. What if instead of attending other people's conferences, Rockbridge created their own, inviting their business partners from across the country to visit Columbus for a few days, connect with colleagues and associates, talk a little shop, and raise money for Pelotonia? The Rockbridge team got to work, and in 2012, the first RTRX, then known as Rock the Road, was born. 30 people, all Rockbridge business partners, attended the half-day event, and many of them rode in Pelotonia the next day. Far from the grand vision of hundreds or thousands of attendees and big keynote speakers, it was a success, raising over $100,000 that first year and introducing Pelotonia to people from across the country. The plan for the second event started the next day. Fast forward a couple years to 2017, and RTRX had hundreds of attendees, a multi-day event with big-name speakers, hundreds of riders on Team Rockbridge Peloton, and an event that raised over $1 million in one single year. This was a tremendous milestone for RTRX and launched bold ideas of what the event could become. Instead of focusing on topics germane just to the hotel business, RTRX started to program topics germane to building better people at the human level, building leaders, inspiring ideas, expanding beyond the hotel industry to leaders in all industries. Rockbridge then partnered with Pelotonia and the Columbus Partnership to lay the groundwork to spin RTRX out into its own entity as a way to expand the reach and impact the event can have on the entire cancer community. In 2018, Siraj Hinduja was hired to lead these efforts and take RTRX to the next level. Siraj has a bold vision, big goals, and as you'll learn in this episode, is driven to make a real impact on this world. Let's start by getting to know Siraj's source of inspiration in this episode titled Powered by Empathy.
Everybody's got their own source of inspiration. I think, I've yet to meet someone that hasn't been impacted by cancer in some way in their life. And you have a very personal sense of inspiration yourself from your mother and sort of watching her go through her cancer battle. What was it about seeing your mom get diagnosed with cancer, go through cancer treatments, you being 10, 11 years old? Like, what were the things that really stuck out to you from that experience?
It felt like the whole world stopped And at the same time that the whole world's like revolution, like increased like 2x, right? Like, like I was in the middle of summer camp and my aunt and my cousin came to pick me up from summer camp, which like when you're 10 years old and your best friend / cousin comes to get you from summer camp, you're thinking like, this is awesome. It's like a week's long sleepover, right? Like you're pumped. And then you realize like, wait a minute, this is kind of odd that my aunt and my cousin are coming to pick me up from summer camp. And then it was like, your mom and dad are at the hospital. And we'll explain everything like when we get home. And I spent 2 weeks living with my aunt and uncle and my cousins while my parents were in the thick of it at the hospital, and we had family coming in and out, mainly from California and from Florida. And I think just seeing the just sheer resiliency of my mother go through that experience, but also seeing how much it affects the entire family, from me to my aunts and uncles to my dad, and then just seeing that like there is such a village that it takes to help someone when they're going through the diagnosis and the treatment and everything in between. And I just realized like whatever I can do to bend the arc a little bit for those researchers and those doctors to find a cure faster, I'm going to go do it. And, of course, my mother is also a very private individual. And when it comes to her cancer diagnosis and her survivorship, I'm very public about it. And she always jokes that like, I've taken the advocacy of a normal person and tried to like do it like 10x, because I just believe the more we talk about it and the more we educate people about it, the more we can do about it.
I think, one of the reasons you were brought on to really lead this platform and take it to the next level is you're an empathetic person to begin with. You have a lot of interests that extend way beyond your personal self. And I think there's so many parallels between what Buckeyethon does and has done and what Rock the Road and Pelotonia does and has done and is going to continue to do. And when you got to college, you got really involved with Buckeyethon. And, we really anyone in Columbus knows Buckeyethon is, the amazing dance marathon put on by the students at Ohio State. It's, I believe, one of the, or maybe the largest dance marathon by number of participants.
It is.
Every year across universities in our country. And I'd love to hear more about how you got involved with that, how you got interested with that, how you, at some point you decided you wanted to be more than just a regular participant in Buckeyethon and really take a leadership role.
I got to Ohio State, one of 50,000 undergraduates, and was just kind of both enamored but scared by the size. And so really focused on my academics my first year, and then stumbled upon Buckeyethon while reading an article in the Lantern, which is the student-run newspaper at Ohio State. And it was after the 2012 dance marathon, and Buckeyethon had just raised $222,000 for Nationwide Children's Hospital, the hematology, oncology, bone marrow transplant unit at Children's. I was lucky enough to join the organization in 2012, and Buckeyethon is made up of a couple different levels of organization and different committees, and I was on the committee overseeing the planning and execution for the 2012 dance marathon, and we raised $454,000 in 2012. After the 2012 dance marathon, I kind of had this moment, this crucible moment, and I was like, I want this to be my life at Ohio State. So I ran for president, having been in the organization for 9 months. I think half the organization did not know my name because I was pretty shy and quiet, and spent 2 years as president in 2013 and 2014. And
is that common? Is that common to have a two-term president in Buckeyethon?
It is not common. It's not common. I mean, not to toot my own horn, it hasn't happened since then.
I'd love to see one of your campaign signs.
Yeah, right, exactly. My campaign memo that I submitted to my interview panel. And so I left Ohio State with a grateful heart because at 20 years old, I was given the opportunity to lead an organization of 150 of the most passionate, dedicated students I'd ever met. We raised just around $1.4 million in those 2 years because of Buckeyethon. And that's kind of what got me, my first job at the Columbus Partnership. And that's what led me here.
I think to go from 100 to 200 to 400 to 700 to $1 million, and now raising $2 million annually, there were things that had to change. And so what was during your 2-year period leading Buckeyethon, what was the big change that happened that helped the fundraising take that next incremental step?
I think the biggest change was that we had to get people, we had to get our members, and we had to get the undergraduate population to realize that Buckeyethon was not just an event that you did, right? It was a part of your undergraduate experience. And it's almost about, Seth Godin talks about like building tribes and building community. And we had to enforce, or we had to really drill into our team that like, we're building a movement.
So you've been a Pelotonia rider since 2015. I would love to hear what one of your favorite memories of Pelotonia has been.
I bought my first road bike in 2015. And that was like one of the first big boy purchases I made after graduating from college.
First really adult, I've got a paycheck.
I'm not going to get the bike from like Dick's Sporting Goods. I'm going to go to a bike store and get some shorts and, jersey and shoes. And was really, really excited about that. And I was like, year one, new bike, let's just do a century ride. Let's ride 100 miles. Which is a great goal to have if your training complements that goal. My training did not. And it was probably one of the toughest rides I've ever done. Of the 100 miles, I probably did 60 of them, like pretty much by myself, right? And when you're, in those...
That's a recipe for a tough ride.
That's a recipe for a tough ride. And when you're in those, Ohio hills and that hot August sun is beaming down on you and you see the SAG vehicles, slowly going by on you, and they're giving you a thumbs up or a thumbs down. And if you're giving them a thumbs up, but you really want to give them a thumbs down, and you just kind of want to pack it up and just get to the finish line. And you just like persevered. And I think from a personal sense of accomplishment, that was probably one of my biggest memories, because I crossed that finish line. I'm willing to bet I was one of the last people, let's just call it last 50 people who crossed that finish line. Please don't confirm that if you guys have that in your records.
We don't keep records.
Okay, that's good. I would just like to say last 50
untimed ride.
And just crossing that finish line was euphoric.
So let's dive in and talk about sort of when you first learned about Rock the Road, which, we'll interchange between Rock the Road and RTRX. When you first heard about this opportunity to come join the team to really grow and expand this movement and this wonderful event that has raised a ton of money for Pelotonia.
I actually first heard about it when I was working at the Columbus Partnership, and my then boss, Alex Fisher, came up to me and said, "Hey, I need you to prep me for this presentation I'm doing at Rock the Road." And I said, "I have no idea what you're talking about." And he said, "Well, I'm doing this presentation, Rockbridge, Pelotonia. We're going to do it on innovation, and I'm going to give a talk and moderate a conversation. So I just need you to go figure it out." So I go to my desk and I Google Rock the Road, Rockbridge, and I'm sitting there scrolling through the website and the information, and I'm kind of beside myself that like, A, I had never heard of this company called Rockbridge. B, at times I consider myself to be like a semi Pelotonia fanboy. And I had no idea that there was an organization here in Columbus that put on a massive event to benefit, for the sole benefit of bringing their industry together, and then to rally that industry and its people and to invest money in cancer research. And so I thought that I was like, this is really interesting. And I probably spent more time reading about Rock the Road than I did prepping Alex for his conversation and his speech, because I was so enamored and so curious about well, why would a private equity firm in the hospitality space do this? And I get why they would do it, and I get why they would ride, and it's awesome they have a Peloton, but who thinks I'm going to go start a conference and it's going to benefit cancer research and it's going to be huge and it's going to be great. Who thinks that and then goes and does it? So I think I was curious about the model of it. I was curious and enamored with that it was actually happening. And then I kind of thought to myself, I was like, this is really interesting. And I wonder how big this could get. And that was, the summer of 2017, before that was the first time I'd ever heard about it.
And so, the fall of 2017 was really when conversations with you and sort of the leadership of Rock the Road and Alex Fisher and Doug Ullman started to pick up, right?
Yeah, started to pick up there. I had been at the partnership for about 4 years at that point, and I was really I was ready for my next opportunity. And having been born and raised here in Columbus, knew that I wanted to stay here, and had gotten to know Doug really well, and then you, Joe, really well. And Doug was like, I really want you to think about. He's like, I have big goals of what I think Rock the Road could be. And I just want you to to dream with us and just think about what it could be. And I did that for a couple weeks, and I kind of went back to him and Alex and said this is something that I'd like to really seriously consider if the opportunity presents itself.
We ended up, I think coming to an agreement to get you away from the partnership and over to Rock the Road in early 2018, late 2017. And you really had to hit the ground running, to really dive in and help lead the 2018 event, which was a really fantastic event. That was the event that lined up with our 10th anniversary of Pelotonia, which was a massive year for Pelotonia from a participation and fundraising standpoint, but also a massive year for Rock the Road. And can you describe the sort of first experience of really learning on the fly to put that event on?
Yeah. And so learning on the fly, and a lot of credit goes to the ad hoc team at Rockbridge who did this in addition to their day jobs, right? Whether it was on project management, whether it was in the executive office, whether it was marketing and events for the company and for the firm and its investors. And then they had Rock the Road on the side. And so I jumped in and, March of 2018, 4 or 5 months before Rock the Road and Ride Weekend. And, was what I initially thought was just going to be a fly on the wall observing, but it was more of jump on the train, we got to go, grab your bags, let's figure this out. And so I really liked that mentality of just rolling up my sleeves and diving in and learning by doing and learning by watching and understanding how this team had put this on together, all the external partners, and vendors that come together to make the dream a reality. And it was kind of dive into the end, the deep zone of the pool, and we're all just going to figure it out together. And it was just a marathon of a sprint for those first 5 months.
Who are the speakers in that 2018 event?
So 2018, Chris Waddell, Paralympic champion, has climbed Mount Everest. Jenny Britton-Bauer from here in Columbus, Jenny's Ice Cream. Joe DeLoss, Hot Chicken Takeover. There's a couple other folks, and it's like fleeting. John O'Leary, who is an individual. He was 9 years old, and he was caught in a house fire, and 95% of his body was covered in third degree burns. And so he talked about adversity and working through that. And it was also the first year that RTRX had ever done a pitch competition for social entrepreneurs, and so brought 3 local social entrepreneurs to RTRX's main stage, gave them each 5 minutes to pitch their business, and then the crowd votes live, and then they get a check for an investment from RTRX on the spot. The winner does. And so it was definitely one of those things where, like I said, it was just like, just dive right in and try and figure it out. 2018, like I said, was like baptism by fire, jump in the deep end with the team. And then kind of like when you and I had that conversation in the fall of 2018, that's when it kind of really set with me, and it sunk in that I was like, oh, I'm running this thing now, right? I've got to figure out an offboard Rockbridge and think about the ways to make this a sustainable operation. And then there's the piece that you talked about with the content and broadening its scope. And I'm a big believer in seeing is believing, right? And when you have to, you're presenting to somebody or you're talking to them about this idea of a business-focused convening, but different. And they're like, well, tell me how it's different, right? And we talk about how it's connected directly to Pelotonia and its financial investments, but also in experiencing Ride Weekend, and then bringing industry leaders from across the spectrum in for this conversations. But you're not necessarily having conversations about like business as usual, right? You're trying to have conversations as to like, you, Joe Apgar, are a change agent at Pelotonia with your family, with your friends, with the boards that you sit on. And so how can we be of value to you as a whole person? And we started to realize that we have to be agnostic when it comes to how we're recruiting our attendees, but also in what we're talking about.
You recently gave my daughter a book, which is called "What Do You Do with an Idea?" And I actually think, if you read the book, it's a children's book, but I think most adults should probably read it too. The question is, what do you do with an idea? And right. This book sort of, goes through this world of this child who has an idea and doesn't know what to do with it, and is scared to tell anyone and show anyone, and is scared to take any action on it. And, the real moral of the story is, what you do with an idea has changed the world. And I think that is actually a really underpinning message of the direction you want to take Rock the Road in.
Yeah. I don't think that it is naive to say that I want every single attendee that comes to Rock the Road, every single member of our community, to go change the world in the way that is right and feels true to them, right? Like, we care about it because we want to double down on the funding for the innovative cancer research that Pelotonia gets behind every year, right? But at the convergence of the person is like, what happens if an attendee leaves the conference and changes the way she thinks about running her business or running her nonprofit? Like, you and I, we could, after our conversation, you and I could get online and go watch a TED Talk. We could go donate to a philanthropic cause that's most important to us. We could travel to, when traveling is safe and in a responsible way, to an industry focused conference for us. And we could go pick up some books on change leadership and how to, activate, change and good in the world. And like, those are like 4 separate things that we have to do at different times. And the model of RTRX is like, what if you did that all in one, right? And you benefited the research that's going to help us find a cure for cancer in a way that's never been done before, the way Pelotonia invests its dollars. And so thinking about that, and it's like, okay, so how do you create experiences? And you mentioned this, that speak to the whole person, right? And I think COVID has taught us, or has reaffirmed the belief that like we are more than just our titles at our organization. We're more than just parents or siblings. We're all of that stuff combined. And so if you can build something that is relevant to the individual from a business standpoint, a personal growth standpoint, a curiosity, inspiration standpoint, a philanthropic standpoint, then you've got something pretty special on your hands. And I think to the next level, if you can do that, like for companies and teams, so that like, it's like, I think you and I, we've shared the dream that like, it becomes this experience where people say like, no matter where they are in the country, they know they have to be in Columbus like the first week in August because of RTRX and of Ride Weekend, right? But think about like how many teams out there, young leaders, leadership teams, like think about how great this could be for them in the growth for their business growth, but also like supporting their teams. And so I think that the opportunity is. And I go back to this, the opportunity is all about empathy. So it's putting ourselves in the shoes of these leaders and individuals. But the opportunity is also all about like service and like, how do we serve our community and how do we help them grow so that they kind of have this catalyst of inspiration and of ideas. And there's a toolkit, right? It's like I heard Joe Apgar talk about this, or if you and I didn't know each other and we came from two separate parts of the country and we met at RTRX, like imagine that collision and the convergence of ideas that could happen and the great things that could happen from that.
When you think about what 2021 looks like, let's pretend the world will be back to normal. We can only hope. You will have had a year off, just like Pelotonia will have had a year off. Our events really fit well together in lockstep with having Rock the Road be sort of a lead up event to Ride Weekend. What are your big goals for 2021? Like, what do you want to see, from an attendee perspective, from a Columbus support perspective? I think there's a huge opportunity to get more people from Columbus participating in this. Like, what are your goals?
So in 2019, we had about 500 people at the event. I've set a goal, and I think we can achieve it and then some, of 750 folks at RTRX 2021. The goals are the 750 folks. It's building out that 2.5 day, 3 day experience. Last year I invited, probably 15 or 20, Columbus leaders from the civic, nonprofit, corporate space, just to come and see, right? Just that whole belief of seeing is believing. And they all left the room and they were like, that was absolutely amazing. I can't believe I didn't know about that. And so my thought process is what if you take 15 individuals and it's 15 companies, right? And so it's us just telling the RTRX story and recognizing it's a mutual benefit, right? Like the event grows, your team grows, the event grows, we put more money into investing in innovative cancer research. And so I think the Columbus market, in terms of getting in front of the right folks to just send a few folks to experience it from all of the leading companies that we have here in Columbus, that's an untapped market. And I think it's an untapped market, an opportunity to build Columbus to be a global convener of leaders around the world. right? And that's what one of the things we want to achieve in the long run too, is that, you know, people, when they say Columbus, they're like, oh, isn't that where RTRX and Pelotonia happen? And you say yes, and people want to be there. And it's known that like the next big idea could come from there, or the next big speaker, or the next big, initiative could come from there. And so how do we put Columbus on that pedestal and grow its reputation across the country?
We want to thank Siraj for his dedication to our one goal and his inspiring record of selfless service. We also want to thank our major funding partners for making all of this possible: the American Electric Power Foundation, Huntington, the L Brands Foundation, and Peggy and Richard Santulli. This is what's next on One Goal.
After I got done with treatment, I really decided that I wanted to dedicate my life to doing something with my skill set to make a difference.
You don't have to be a doctor to impact people's lives, particularly around health. You know, you can be a donor, to Pelotonia. And by doing so, be at the bedside with me, or be in the research lab with someone who's coming up with novel immunotherapy.
You've been listening to One Goal, a podcast from Pelotonia. Season 2 will be hosted by me, cancer survivor and chief operating officer of Pelotonia, Joe Apgar, with interview and production scheduling by our marketing and communications team duo, Emily Smith and Gabby Blauer. Produced, mixed, and sound designed at the studios of Wessler Media by Vince Tornero. Additional mastering by Joey Gerwin at Orange Judio. Special thank you to all of our guests for being so open and willing to share their stories. Please be sure to rate, review, and subscribe to this podcast, as that will help others hear these empowering journeys. If you're curious about joining the Pelotonia community and making an impact on cancer research, please see the link in the episode notes or visit pelotonia.org. That's pelotonia.org.